Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for the time. I'm excited to be here and been doing a lot of these webinars throughout the COVID times as we're all stuck in our rooms. So again, my goal is to make this less of me doing a monologue and at the very least as valuable and interesting as I can make it for everyone on this line or everyone watching later. Topic of the discussion is going to be getting to the first sale. And as I mentioned, we'll cover a little bit of some of the things that I've learned over time prior to my professional career. And then some of the things that I've experienced in my professional career as well as kind of my background as well. So I'll break it out into advice for students. And really the game plan back in the day was, how do you get max grades for low hours of input? And I'll cover a couple different items there in terms of what worked for me. But the idea here as an entrepreneur is the economics of it. How can you get the maximum amount of output, whether that's revenue generating activities like sales, by using your time efficiently and dedicating that to the right tasks. And then we'll segue into, after a questions and answers section or space there in case we need a break, getting to the sale. What does that look like? How do you start to conceptualize what your sale is going to be? You know, breaking down your product and service, how you want to take that to the market, the types of people you want to take that to the market to serve, and even breaking into, why are you selling it? And for me, I'm very big on mission, vision, values, and selling to people that believe the same thing that I believe. And that's part marketing and that's brand iconography, but it also relates to just find the buyers you're looking for. So we'll go through a couple things there. And I have a few resources that I've laid off to the side in case we get into any questions about tools or tips or anything specific that I can bring up as well. So a little bit about me. Typically people see the name Rick James and they crack up and they think Dave Chappelle or they think the funk singer. I've lived with that my entire life, and it's been one of the greatest marketing tools that I did absolutely nothing to earn throughout my career. So not that Rick James. I graduated from Cal State Fullerton in 2013 with a finance degree and got into sales enablement and sales kind of training and leadership through a local demolitions contractor and working under their VP of business development. And then I got into sales legit in 2014 and was the guinea pig for a leadership development program for now a $1.2 billion security systems company, and basically doubled my revenue every year. I got to a point where I was one of the leaders in the office, managing accounts like Long Beach Airport, the ports of LA and Long Beach, data center clients, Kaiser Permanente, Boeing, Fox Studios, Sony Pictures, kind of like a who's who throughout Southern California with both local, regional, and also national and global clients as well. So I did that for 5 years up until February of this year, where I left, took a hiatus, and started searching for my next job, and recently arrived moving from physical security systems to a company called Cloudflare, where I'll be starting in February. And they hire less than 1% of individuals. I'm very honored and proud to have been hired there, but they provide internet to something like 20% of the world's internet properties and services around reliability and sustainability, performance, and security. So excited for that. But in my sales career, I was able to achieve something like $6 million in the last 2 years for a sales environment that, again, they didn't have a leadership development program. I had to build from the ground up, teach myself, and really I had to learn construction technology, sales, and security systems. So my focus here is going to be talking about the sales aspect of that. And I was privileged and really benefited from some incredible coaching that I'll be relaying some of the lessons from as well. So when I was in college in 2012, there was an interesting event that got me into security systems and got me into sales. And it was on 12/12/12, December 12th in 2012, at the business building was shut down and a SWAT team had to clear it. And what happened was that some robbers had stolen some jewelry from, I think it was a spot in Inglewood or something like that, drove to campus, got out, ran into Mihaylo Hall, and they changed their clothes and then ran out. And because no one had been tracking these individuals, from the giant crowds, if they were coming or going, or if they were still in the building, that entire building got shut down. There were armed individuals with assault rifles on campus. They had to clear every single one of those rooms. And that got me thinking about, why couldn't we just use camera technology and security technology? So that's what got me started in the industry. We started in really looking at sales, knowing that I want to one day start my own business, and really just looking at the earnings potential. And I'll be quite frank, since my mid-20s, I haven't made less than $100,000 a year due to choosing this career path. So if that's something you're interested in, hopefully a lot of this will be useful for you. Again, send any questions or anything in particular that you have through the chat. But one of my first sales experiences, I joined a student organization on campus, and we went out and reached out to local businesses in the Cal State Fullerton area for partnerships. So we would get companies like Pepe's Burritos to donate, $800 to get a spot on our t-shirts. And I was the guy that would go in and pitch. It kind of looked like, I would walk into Pepe's where I eat every year and break down the business value and the business scenario for taking us on as a sponsor and representing them on campus. There are a couple things. First of all, that being my first sales experience ever, and ultimately generating several $1,000s for the student organization that I was in per semester, gave me a little bit of experience there and gave me the hunger that I wanted for sales. But in addition to that, I wasn't the typical college kid. And I see this from a lot of entrepreneurial minded people, is that they want to use the most of their time, and maybe the class isn't at the right speed for them, or the learning style isn't the best. So I figured out something that is generally worth sharing, which is I was able to speed up my learning, get better grades while working 3 jobs and putting myself through college. And the way that I did that is I had read this, guide, you could call it, to getting the maximum amount of grades in just a couple of hours. I'll go back to this graphic because I think it illustrates the point of, many entrepreneurs I feel like are looking for efficiently, certainly for salespeople. And so how we manage our time, how we prioritize the economics of our work hours, the golden hours, as we call them in sales, is extremely important for understanding output. So I did the same thing in college, and I'll leave this up here for a second in case anyone wants to snapshot it, but don't miss a class, sit in the front row, read your notes from the last class, do the assigned reading, but don't highlight it, write it on a note card, write it on the margin. But specifically what I would do is I would follow all of these. And I read Visit Your Professor Once a Week and Do Any Extra Credit, and take those as given. These are fantastic advice, but it really was what came out of this that was more beneficial for me. I started going to classes completely differently. And what I would do is I would front load all of my work for that class instead of doing what a lot of students do and just kind of every day or week show up to class, take notes, roll that into the next week. I created a cadence and an overall strategy for the class. And what that means is before the first day of class, wrote down everything that I could about the syllabus and went through it in extreme detail. And what I would do is I would book office hours with that professor on the first availability. No one does this. So what happens is that you walk in as a student and you have this professor that sees you as a go-getter. That is a primary move that's there to ask questions before anyone is asking questions. And you are immediately differentiated, which similar to how you want to differentiate for sales. Now you're differentiating yourself as a student. And I would go into office hours and I would have a real conversation with my professors. And how that conversation would go would be something like this. My name is Rick. I'm taking for me, it was a finance class, let's say 321. And I've read through the syllabus. I took some notes on it. I have a couple questions, but I also just wanted to get to know you as a teacher. Do you have 20 minutes where we could talk? And they almost always said yes. And so I would sit down and say, here's what I hope to get out of your class. But before anything else, tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get into teaching? And just like with sales, this is building rapport. But, maybe Philip can jump on later and explain how often students even ask a question like this. Is you have these students that come in and come out every year. So if you go to a teacher and you really make the effort to get to know them and understand the prerogative for teaching, you will connect with them on a different level than any other student in that class. So I would ask them earnestly, what here's what I think I'm going to learn about this class. Is that in alignment with what you want me to learn? What are some of the key points that are the most salient that I should pull away from this class that I know about? And then if I've built up enough rapport, the last question is, how do I get an A? And it's very similar to a sales process. You build rapport, you get to know them, you take legitimate interest in them, don't feign it, flattery doesn't work. And then the question like, how do I get an A? And most of the time the teacher would say, study this, I test out of these lectures, here's the best source of this information. And I started a relationship with that teacher. And so when I went back and did these steps and I stayed in the front row, if I can find them, I sat in the front row. I never missed a class. I took notes, and then I revisited those notes by stapling all of my class notes together and creating these easy study guides. I had a personal relationship with my teachers and understood them to where learning was much easier. So I wanted to share that to provide some immediate value, but also this is very similar to what the sales process looks like. And if you've never had a sales process, if you're a student and you're looking like this at potentially selling in the future, this is a great way to practice those skills and to get to know someone in a way that is going to benefit you. Phil, I saw you jumped on video for a second. Did you have something you wanted to add in?
Oh, I just really want to nod and affirm affirmation about your strategy. Talking with the professors and building the rapport is really important. It really allows the professors, for those people who are students, allows the professors to acknowledge who those people are. Really does differentiate you as a go-getter, and it's going to be a lot easier. It's not about doing anything outside of what is required. I mean, it's a very simple requirement. The teacher teaches and the students learn, and that's really what you're setting it up for. So I think that's great that you bring that up, and I think that's a great strategy for students, and really just building that foundation for sales.
And truthfully, what it comes down to is that, I didn't feel like school was built for me, so I made it my own. And, a lot of people, when you get into sales, you're going to feel like I have to do this type of sales or another type of sale. I mean, when you're the CEO or the owner and you're looking to get to sales, there's a lot of different ways to get to the waterfall, as Vince Vaughn says it, meaning that you can delegate, you can focus more on marketing type sales, you can focus more on on-person sales, but ultimately you have a goal that you have to get to. And for me in school, this was a great kind of opportunity and demonstration to get to know people and to create a process that worked for myself. And I use many of those same skills and that foundation and that framework in sales today, with how I open up, how I qualify, how I prospect, how I get to know people and build rapport and kind of do the friendly, fun, and social side of selling, while also getting down to the brass tacks and qualifying and getting information that leads to a sale. So we're about 15 minutes in. I'm going to pause before we get into getting to the first sales part and kind of the more business part. Any questions on the first part, my background, anything like that before we move forward? Cool. Sounds like we're good to go. So getting to the sale. When the most important lessons that I've learned about selling is that there are a lot of different types of sales, meaning that there are large businesses that pursue strategic sales with federal and public companies that require RFPs and administration. And then there are more private companies that are maybe a little more simple, or small companies where you're reaching out. It's like you're selling to a friend. And when I think about how to sell and getting to the first sale, you want to simplify the framework and the model in your head as much as possible. You want to not overcomplicate things and develop a fear of going out and selling. Really, the thing is that or you're an entrepreneur, you should be excited about this, and you should know that you're excited about this, and bring that excitement into your conversations with people. And you should have some good understanding to answer. You should have an elevator pitch down pat so that you can do. And the reason is you don't want to abuse their attention span over that 30 seconds. But you never know when you're going to get into the elevator with a CEO of someone really important. Maybe not in these days. But I remember for elevator with a gentleman from the CISA, which was a huge information security agency through the government, at the same time as I was running physical and cybersecurity programs for the Port of LA, the Port of Long Beach, and Long Beach Airport. So you just never know, and you kind of have to get through all of those situations. So where I would recommend to start is start with why. And in the agenda earlier, I'm going to cover some pretty basic questions in terms of what the slides are going to display. But really what I want to focus in on is it's the basics that are the most important. So again, I'm a 6'5" guy. You can't see this on video. I played basketball my entire life. How do you become a very strong basketball player, or at least better than 80% of the others? You work on, and you get really strong at the fundamentals, and then you'll pretty much be better than 80% of people. if you just stick to those guns and you know them, and then you can work into the advanced stuff. Sales is very much like that as well. This video by Simon Sinek, How Great Leaders Inspire Action, is a extremely popular. I think it's the #1 video on TED. And it's, Simon Sinek, who does zero marketing. All of his sales are from referral and word of mouth. And he's talking, as you can see, as what he's pointing to is he's talking about the golden circle. And there's a why and how and what, and why is in the center and what is on the outside. And what he's saying is that many of you have probably seen this, so I'll speak through it. Most organizations sell transactionally. They sell on the what. Here's a phone. It does phone things. This is what it does by the phone. Some of them sell on the how. This is our phone. We make it with economic and green products to be sustainable in the environment. But if you get to why, here's our phone that we make from all renewable because we're supporting X, Y, and Z. And a better example of that is that he uses in the video is Apple. Apple celebrates great engineering. They happen to make a variety of products and sell, but what they is in innovation and engineering. Nike make a ton of different products, sponsor incredible athletes, but why? Well, they are celebrating great athletics. The why is extremely important. And the reason, and again, he goes into much more detail, is that if you can connect with someone on the why, if for Jim that worked at Boeing before, if you can understand the mission, vision, and values of Boeing, and you're trying to sell to someone like Boeing, and you understand that this is a group of like-minded individuals that want to put incredible machines in the air and innovate and, defend our country many a time, and you can connect with them on that level, that's a really incredible way to build rapport and start a sale and start a relationship. So you need to understand your mission, your vision, your values for your business and your product or your service. And this is a key cornerstone piece of understanding that is going to be able to give you the conviction to launch many of these conversations. So as much as this is only a few words on a screen, spend time on this. Write about your company is a great way to do it. Do podcasts with your friends where you're trying to explain a company to them, or or go out and actually try to sell it to people. When I was first selling security systems, one of my mentors took me to South Coast Plaza, and I walked into every single one of those stores and tried to sell them security. I couldn't sell them anything. We only installed for much, much larger clients, but it was flexing those muscles that gave me the repetition and the confidence to accelerate my learning scale to where I was able to sell, multi-$100,000 deals in the first 6 months because I had gotten those reps in and gotten over that fear of rejection. And lastly, have a good story. And especially if that ties together your mission, vision, and values. I started this company because I wanted to make this change in the world or for these people, or I saw this problem. And here's how it came about. Now here's what we do. We work with companies like XYZ to increase their sales output by 30%, whatever that is. But hone in on that story, hone in on a elevator pitch, and understand really your company and how you want to be perceived so that you can explain that to people. And that way, if you start with why and you understand why you've come to the table and want to sell, it's going to get everything else down the road, especially with your marketing, with your branding and your brand iconography. It's going to make those things a lot easier because you'll know the things that you want to reflect with the marketing decisions that you're making. So starting out, start with why. Now, thinking about how, and I don't want to get too into details here, but how you're going to sell is going to be really important. If you have a product, like a former Titan graduate, good friend of mine, started a company that is an engineering company, and 6 months before COVID hit in March, he had begun research on a UV light that uses UVC so that it can sanitize viruses and bacteria even off of the skin, and it's safe. So he had this COVID that it fit, where he could sell this to airports and people could take all of their things through it and then walk through themselves and be fully sanitized. Places of business, Amazon is his largest client, and he has a clean room for them set up in Seattle. But that's a very different product, car washes or creating a product that you're selling on the internet. So you really need to take some time to understand, and these are the basics. Of course, I would expect that anyone on this call or anyone conceiving of a product or service would have gone through this, but know your product or service, channels and ways that you're going to advertise and sell this. Is it going to be specific to a vertical? meaning that are you going to sell to, hospitals, or are you going to sell to everyone? And in my opinion, it's much better. I'm going to Seth Godin's tribe, where you want to build a culture around a product of the most, single 1,000 people that are going to be adamant about your product, that are going to absolutely love it, and that are going to be the ideal customers to represent it, to give you referrals, to sing its graces to others. So be specific with the customers at first that you want to reach, provide value to them, and then build off of that. I wouldn't try to tackle every single vertical or industry at one time. I would try to start with one, measure, get feedback, build a group, and then let that steamroll as your sales move forward. Understanding MQL and SQL, and if you haven't heard those terms, that is marketing qualified leads or sales qualified leads, which I've broken out here as basically active or passive sales. And then also think about, where are the buyers? Where's your marketplace? Another Titan good friend of mine is a graduate that has an Instagram page that displays Christian jewelry, and that is it. And that leads to a Shopify account, and that's his entire business. And he makes a couple $1,000 a month on the side doing this. So understand your buyers, your marketplace, how to reach them, and then the type of message and how active or passive you want to be in your sales is really going to be dictated by your product service and the type of business that you want. If you are standing up a big products that you're getting a warehouse for and you're going to ship this thing out, you can't really rely on passive sales for something that's that big and important of an investment. You're going to have to be actively selling yourself. So if you are actively selling, a couple things to think about. What are the sales channels that you're going to be selling through? Are you going to have product partners? Are there force multipliers where you can have reps, for example, that carry a number of lines and can expand your sales reach out? You should be networking. And there's a little bit that I'll go into later on how to think about networking. But, being an SDR in the past and working on sales development and opening cold leads and cold calling companies, in my opinion, everyone should have that skill. And if you're running a company or you're starting with a company and you don't have that skill, that's the number one thing that you need to work on. You need to get through any fears that you have of prospecting until it becomes a natural part of your behavior, or you'll miss out on a significant amount of opportunity as you go kind of throughout your days. Phil, did you want to add anything in there? I see you nodding a lot.
Oh, absolutely. I love what you said about Seth Godin, and I really like his purple cow and looking for something different. I love the idea about niche marketing, but really what he talks about too is sneezers, along what you're saying, people who are going to spread the word. And, in lean startup terms, we also call those early adopters, and those early adopters are really what's going to help you reach those later majority people. Those are the people that are diehards. Those are the people who love your brand because of what you're doing and your purpose, and it really falls back into the why. So a lot of what you're saying I've heard from other people as well, and in other terminologies. So I know this works, and I know this works also from from seeing it, firsthand. So I really like where you're going with this. One of the questions I do have, and I think the audience might also have, is the difference between, say, MQL or SQL, whereas someone might put out a branding message versus how do we actually go about, say, creating a Facebook ad that's actually going to convert. So a brand awareness versus something that's going to convert. Do you have any rules or metrics or anything that you use when you're going to do either branding or you're going to try to actively convert someone?
Yeah, so it goes out that predominantly I've worked for large multi-million-dollar companies that have entire departments that are putting together marketing and branding and what the message is. And that's why I'm a firm believer that culture sells. If you can get to someone and say, this is what we believe and this is how we support, versus, here's what our product does. When you sell with culture, I think that there's a promise in that we're good people and we're going to take care of you. And so you can trust us in the sale. So when I think about branding and what that looks like, how to, brand and market in a way that is going to, that really delves into what the entire sales process looks like. You want to have something that is a great Kickstarter, that is a little bit of a purple cow and will get someone's attention. And to your point, and Simon Sinek's video earlier, he talks about the law of diffusion of innovation, and you have early adopters and late adopters. And after you get that first 16.67%, you hit the early and the late majority, you can win over the next, 66%. So how do you get that first 20% so that you can lead into the much greater later sales? Well, for me, it all comes down to value. You need, as a owner, as a salesperson, to have as good of an understanding of your client's environment almost as they do. And I bet the best situation is kind of like, I was selling security systems. So if I went into an airport and had no idea about airport security systems, that's very different than if I've done my due diligence and I'm able to approach the airport as an expert and say, listen, I know you need security systems. So that's a very easy thing for a salesperson to bring up. But are you aware of how they're being used throughout the world? Are you aware of the latest and greatest technology? Are you aware that you might be out of compliance with security regulation or metrics that could get you fined by TSA for $50,000 because you don't have your security systems in place? And similarly for whatever you're selling, right? If it's, I'll go back to the example earlier of the UVC, sanitizing. If I'm creating something that is marketing for that, you need a pitch book similar to the PowerPoint that I have here so that you can take that to people and talk to them. You need something to give them, whether that's a YouTube video that you can share that explains your product, white paper that you're going to keep a bunch in your car of, you can give that to people and show. It comes down to the value that your product or service provides. Offer any specific piece of advice does for them to run your business. When I thought about security systems, most of the businesses that I sold to were not in the business of security systems. What I mean by that is Kaiser Permanente did not care about my security systems. It was my world. But what's important to them? What's important to them is delivering great patient experiences in healthcare and taking care of people. So if I think of it from that perspective and I look at their website, vision and values, and go back to my marketing and say, well, how am I going to approach them? I need to create white papers that show how security systems allow them to do their real jobs, their real business, and continue to take care of people in a way that is safe, continues to monitor, their DEA regulated drugs in a way that they can be accountable and feel comfortable that, there's double and triple checks for all of these things that they have elsewhere. So when I think about branding, when I think about how to approach that, you want to do that, what product or service does and makes an impact regarding their actual business, not by focusing on your product or service or talking about features or functionality. Think about them as a business owner and kind of put yourself in their shoes and say, okay, if I'm running this business, why do I need this thing? And sometimes they might not. And that's kind of what the qualifying process looks like. So having that framework to think of, what's the end game for this and how should I be building my marketing is going to allow you to from the front end MQL and marketing to converting those leads. When you start qualifying and having conversations, you're going to have uniformity and say, for the company that I'm joining, they want the internet they provide the internet in a way that is secure, reliable, and performance, security, and reliability. And that's what comes across materials, and that's what comes across when I go to sell it. And similarly, you probably want 2, 3, or 4 bullet points that say, this is what we do, this is what we believe, this is how we do it, where you can leave someone with that very quickly regarding your marketing. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. And it definitely goes in line with what I always believe and what I preach on Lean Startup is knowing your customer and knowing what your customer wants. I think that salespeople definitely need to understand that understanding the customer's pains and what it is that they're looking for is ultimately important. So thank you for addressing that.
Yeah, the old adage goes, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you should use them in proportion. And there was a specific time I was selling to a company that was on Al Qaeda's hit list. It was a refinery, and they had a very high need for security because they did a third, that chain or the company itself that later got bought by Marathon Petroleum. They were responsible for a third of Arco's gas supply throughout the U.S. And my customer that I was meeting with, I was doing a sidewalk and designing their security and talking, about all this technology, was probably on the 15th hour of a 16-hour shift. I'm a young, energetic guy that wants to talk about all this technology. He couldn't care less. He's worried as operations manager about keeping the plant running. And as I spouted off all this techno, mumbo jumbo to him, he just kind of put his head against the wall and leaned on it in a sense of frustration. And when I recapped and I rehashed that later, I went back and apologized to him actually down the road. He goes, "Hey man, I get it. If you're not listening to your customer and you're talking about what you want to talk about, you're not having a conversation. You're talking to yourself." And so talking isn't selling. Listening isn't selling. You really want to get your customer to open up, and you can't sell someone something that they don't want. There's no way you're going to be able to break through that and be so ultimately persuasive that you can manipulate them to buy something they don't need. So the best way to approach it, as I've always thought, is, hey, this deal might not work out, but it also might be something that's fantastic for you. So I'm giving you the opportunity to say no from the beginning. Now, tell me about your plans and your goals for this thing. And if I found the right buyer and I'm talking to the right person who is responsible for those things, hey, are you responsible for the health and safety of people regarding your security technology? Is that your responsibility, or can you route me to the decision maker that I should be speaking to? Oh, you can? Great. Would you feel comfortable calling them and giving me a reference introduction? Right? But you get to the right person and you ask them about what their goals and plans are. And ultimately what you're trying to do is slot yourself into those and be a value added partner supporting what they're doing. You're not a part of their company. The way that you get less transactional and just someone that's selling a widget for a certain amount of money is that you really kind of get around the desk and onto their side of the table and say, how can I help you run your business? It's going to take some dollars, but I can be a partner that makes things a lot simpler for you and gets you back to running your objectives and goals. So there's a couple things that are definitely worth getting into deep detail on. And Phil, I think that was a very good segue to go out on, but I want to keep moving through and leave some time for questions as well. But just leaving this up here, you have to be out networking. You have to be excited about what you're doing in sales, because that excitement is very much contagious. You should be, having a stack of cards to be able to give to people at all times. And you should be comfortable as an SDR or cold calling, unless you're going to completely outsource those levels of business development. You should absolutely ask for referrals. It is amazing, the statistics on how many salespeople and owners do not ask for referrals. The best two times to do that are when you're delivering a proposal or when they're accepting the proposal, or, good third time is when they're accepting the actual delivery of the goods. When there are good feelings about the conversation and the transactions that are going, or negotiations, those are the best times to ask for referrals, because they're already happy and they're satisfied. And then passive sales, depending on the type of product service, how you're going to market, understand your marketplace, understanding the marketing and branding. And again, try to have that unifying message that goes through, so that when you say, hey, we are delightful to speak to, and they call you and they see your email response, or they submit a customer service complaint, feeling that our company work with in every single interaction. And that's how you create a really strong brand, is you maintain consistency on a clear promise that you've made. So what does that actually look like? These are two diagrams that are taken from HubSpot, and HubSpot is a CRM tool that is very widely used. It's also a free CRM. You can use a freemium version of that. And these diagrams do a pretty good job of breaking down SQL and MQL, in case this is something you haven't seen before. So for someone completely unfamiliar with sales, or not really delving into the different types, these are really the two ways that you get sales. You go out and you shake hands and you kiss the babies yourself, or your team does that, and you make one-to-one or one-to-many conversations where you educate people and then you move towards being able to provide a proposal or a deal. Or you use your marketing to kind of softly go out and passively bring people to you. And you really need both. The familiarity you get from marketing goes a long way for the SQL. And I'll share one story. There's a company in the security systems industry called Verkada that used kind of a blitzkrieg strategy to go from $30 million to $150 million in revenue over the last 2 years. That was the change, almost 5 times the size. And what they did was they invested heavily into marketing, and they would pay people $25, $50 to jump on a webinar and learn about their product and kind of the technology that goes along with it. Or they would send people these Yeti tumblers that people love, that were engrammed with their company logo. And so everyone had heard about this, and they did this incredible business development initiative where they reached out to all of these CTOs and all of these IT professionals. to where when I was eventually selling their good, if I mentioned their name, someone at least had a base level of familiarity because they had those touch points. And that softens the sale to where familiarity goes a really, really long way in sales. So it's kind of like with dating. If you can find the person that you want to date and you're like, this is, the girl, or this is the guy for me, and you can make yourself look amazing by having their friends talk about you first, or your friends talk about you first, and kind of build you up a little bit, it eases the conversation to where you've got some interest and some familiarity going into it. And sales is very similarly, is very much the exact same thing. So what does the actual sales process look like? In case anyone is not familiar, you need to find opportunities. You need to qualify those opportunities. You need to educate and move towards being able to proposal on whatever it is going to do to support them or be a provide. And then you need to follow up. And when I think about being a young entrepreneur, or even being younger in sales, the fulfillment aspect of sales a lot of times gets overlooked. And why is that important? Well, for me, I was selling security systems. So you might need those to be in compliance for, whatever, to continue to run your business. And if you don't have those by a certain date, then you might be out of compliance. So I needed to know when I sold a system, which this is construction, we had to roll a truck. We would go out, we would buy all the materials, site from the objectives, install the cabling and the infrastructure, install cameras, install access control doors and intercoms, all the network server, the network switches, and the computers required to run all of the stuff. And then we would commission it and we would go back and make sure that everything worked. And then there's a warranty period and a service period after where they can call on us if anything starts working. And if you only understand, here's my product or service, here's what it's supposed to do, but you haven't sold it yet, you're not going to have the experience to be able to talk through all those things. You need to at least work it through, create a fake sale. Pretend that you're selling to a relative or someone else. You're creating all of these deadlines, nuggets that you need to be able to provide to someone. So by helping focus on the sales process and knowing what happens pre-sale, how quickly you fulfill shipping times, what does the product look like, a full understanding and wrap your arms around that ecosystem if you're going to be the expert and going to be confident in the sale. And there's nothing wrong with saying, that's a great question. Let me write that down. I'll get back to you. So don't feel if you're nervous or you're getting into sales that you have to be Johnny on the spot and know every answer to every question. It's much more important to be honest. It's more important to be transparent. One of the best clients that I ever brought on that got bought by BlackBerry, a company, Silence. I had made a mistake in the sale because they hadn't given me some information that was important. Called them, apologized, owned up to it, said, this is what I'm going to do about it, made a lifelong client out of it. So don't do the right thing is know everything all of the time. And understanding the sales process, if you're not super familiar with it, what you need to know is that the pipeline is difficult to fill. That's why prospecting is important. That's why referrals are important. That's why having a multi-pronged strategy for sales is very important to be able to work all of these angles at the same time. I'm going to keep on moving through. Again, know your fulfillment process, understand shipping dates, milestones. Really what this comes down to is, what are the questions that your customer is most likely to ask once they've bit on the idea of the sale? Once you say, this is who I am, this is the company, this is what we do as a product or service, and here's what we can do for you. They go, okay, so what's that going to look like? And these are the types of questions that you want to know and be able to answer, that it's legit. And you can concrete fulfill that and show that you have the familiarity to go and fulfill, whether that's an order from China or you're a Boeing truck and do it. Whom are you selling? Really what this gets into is when you're qualifying, you're prospecting, you're trying to create an ideal customer profile. And Phil mentioned this earlier, I mentioned it as well. Be specific, who you're trying to sell to, of the value that they're going to receive. Do companies have a budget, or do these customer profiles have a budget for good or your business? Maybe they get grant funding from someone else because they're a public entity or business, and you can go and propose and get some of that grant funding. Or, maybe it's an IT solution. You should go talk to the IT group, even though it's a risk management. They can pull some of the funding from over here. So being able to get the client to open up about budget or to understand their budget cycles and how you can fit in is very important. Knowing your decision makers. If you spend all the time talking to the wrong people, you'll never get anywhere. So you need to understand who you need to talk to and make moves to spend the most time as possible talking to those decision makers. Know their buying window. Do you get them to open up and say, hey, when do you usually buy this widget? They say at the end of January, and it's February. You go, did I miss the sale? And they say yes. That might be a hot customer profile if you touch base. Hey, hopefully you remember me with face, a couple times over the year. It sounds like we're getting when you're talking to customers and asking these type of qualifying questions becomes really important. There's a lot of acronyms here that you can go to and use, like MEDPIC as a qualifying metric. You can get into all the, spin selling and the challenger sale in terms of strategies or finding the problem and creating awareness and then, moving towards a solution. The one that I was talking about is TAM, decision makers, award criteria, monies as in budget, information related to the sale, and timing. Timing is extremely important. And again, what does your business or your solution do for their business? Once you have a decent idea of what your ICP, your ideal customer, looks like, and you can find a ton of these worksheets online, I wouldn't do, sources of information like their favorite books or anything like that, but research that customer as much as you can, or at least a customer that's an avatar of the type of customer you want to reach out to understand the social groups that they're in and kind of some of their motivations for the sale. I would put all of that information into an Excel sheet, into a CRM, and I would create an outreach cadence so that I can now send them marketing information and flyers. I can use LinkedIn to, if I want to use a bot on LinkedIn, for example, I can go and automate reaching out to people with titles that are similar to theirs. Once you find that ICP, you can do a lot with it by focusing in your outreach on people just like that ideal customer. And when I say create an outreach cadence, using something like a CRM to say, I'm going to reach out on this Monday the 1st, and then again via email and LinkedIn the next Monday. And then I'm going to do a follow-up 3 days later and call them and ask about them if they have any questions. And if they don't reach out to me, I usually will run cadences until they outright tell me no, or until I run into an absolute brick wall and cannot get to another decision maker. And typically, if it's a strategic opportunity, I will call on 5 ways of that company concentrically at the same time until one of them breaks because they love my on the phone persona and they are willing to reference me to the decision maker or give me an opportunity to pitch, move towards a presentation. You can do a lot of market research and get stuck, and I'll talk about kind of the 3 Ps that prevent salespeople from professional success. These are 2 images from Zoom Info. One talks about how Zoom Info gets all of their information. Very easy to get stuck in all of this data. What you need to do is understand the basic information of your client, firmographic information, what type of company, what size of company, what geography of company, what do they do as a business, and then how are you, brought in there. And that's where you'll see in the middle, you can create an outreach, you'll work on conversion. But that first part, that discover part of the conversation is where most salespeople and entrepreneurs seem to flounder and not be able to bring in the lifeblood of sales into the organization. You should have some degree of understanding of why your product or service is better than market alternatives. And again, hone and focus in on the value of what you're providing. If you really are going to be an expert in selling what you're selling, you should know the industry, you should know your competitors, you should know your product and service in and out, and then you should know what differentiates all of those things so that you can be very specific about how you go to market, what you bring, your pricing, and everything that comes along with it. So I'll leave some time for questions and answers, but as I have Shia LaBeouf, I'm very proud of this slide that says, just do it. Really what this comes down to and what I want to express is that if you're worried about or you have a fear of doing sales, nothing sells like selling. What that means is that it takes a couple sales until you really get the wind in your sails. I hate that pun, but you have to do it and you can't be afraid of it. And if you block yourself from going out and doing selling, you're never going to get to the place that you need to be. So if you probably did, unless you're a project and you figure it out, you're going to be bad at it before you're good at it. So fanatical prospecting, which is fantastic if you need a good book to read on this. And he talks about procrastination and analysis paralysis. If you find yourself procrastinating, if you find yourself going back to work on marketing or not picking up the phone to do a dial, or if you're trying to make sure everything's just perfect, stop what you're doing, and just do it. And you'll find that there's really nothing on the other side of that fear. There's a quote from General LeMay, who was one of the generals in World War II, bomber advocate, but basically it was a very successful general that did something, that took action than vacillate and do nothing. And that's important, is that it's better to take a stupid action or to make a mistake. Action, you've got inertia and you can roll out of that rather than allow it to paralyze you. I say this knowing that, these are some of the fears that I had as a sales colleague and that all people have in sales, is that fear of rejection is built into our brains. So be aware of it, overcome it. Exercise helps a lot with this, by the way. So know that you're going to need to fill your pipe, be fanatical, kind of obsess over this, and have a lot of conversations in order to be successful in sales. And this is generally what the pipe looks like. And again, I want to leave a little bit of time for questions, and I've kind of gone in depth on a couple of different things here, but what I'll leave you with is, the people that are on this call are focused on learning sales and learning entrepreneurship and, having experiences and successes in that arena. So first of all, it's not easy. Good for all of you. I chose sales because I wanted to be of value to customers. I wanted to be able to own my own income. And quite frankly, I wanted to be able to make more money than my family ever made when I was growing up. I was a single income mom, slept on the couch a bunch of years. And so in my 20s was able to achieve those goals, but you're not going to do it without trying very hard, creating some mistakes, and focusing on making sure that you have these fundamentals is going to prevent a lot of the mistakes that sales professionals typically get into in their first couple of years of selling by having those locked down. Okay, so break, I'll go to you, Phil, and then any other questions or discussion. If there's any points that you think I might want to cover in more detail or any other questions, I'm all yours.
Yeah, I loved everything that you said. And, really, honestly, procrastination does get the betterment of a lot of us. And, CEO means that you're the chief executive officer. A lot of people, they tend to forget that, and we get stuck in this analysis paralysis. A lot of the times it's because we're not really sure of the value that we're providing, or maybe we're just afraid. These are simple fears. I'm glad that you addressed that. It reminds me of a book called Getting to Know. And really, if you go about this and you have the idea that people are going to say no to you, then you win. And we look at no as a bad word, like we're not good enough or something of that sort. No means no, not right now, or no, you might have actually reached the wrong person. And so no doesn't always mean no. And the thing I want to give as a tip for those people who are starting out and who might feel that nervousness, which is normal, is to call a friend and just have a friendly chat. You don't have to sell your friend. I wouldn't sell your friend, but just have a friendly chat and just say, hey, how's it going today? And okay, I'm about to make my sales calls. It puts you in a positive mood so that you can get your day started and start cranking on the phone. It really makes a big difference. And it kind of diffuses all that worry up front. So I really like what you're saying. I think that you had some really great golden nuggets there. Anyway, I'll be quiet a little bit. I'm sure that we have some other people that want that have some questions. So I'll open the floor up.
Please, and I'll add on to that really quickly too. Chris Voss has a book called Never Split the Difference, and he was an ex-FBI hostage negotiator. And so that book is all around these exciting kind of like bank heist level thriller situations. But in that book, there's a whole section that echoes get to the no as quickly as possible. You get a no and you push for that no. Early on, you can ask questions like, what about this deal doesn't work for you? And so it puts people at ease because they're not waiting on this giant climactic yes or no moment. It's, hey, it's cool that this doesn't work for you. Let's work towards that yes. And people will open up a lot more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So feel free to open up if you feel comfortable unmuting yourself and chiming in or kind of saying things through the chat window.
Definitely. So I got Mark, thanks for the informative webinar. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hopefully it wasn't just me drooling on and gave you guys a good nap. A good book or two that I recommend reading on sales, Fanatical Prospecting by Jeb Blount is phenomenal. It's one of the most recommended books that I've received because prospecting is so important for getting top of pipeline. And if I'm starting a business, starting to market a product, thinking about prospecting, this is also a great mindset book. Mindset by Carol Dweck is a great mindset book if you want something that's going to get you in the mode of being unstoppable. Quite frankly, the best book that I ever read on sales is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's a powerful, powerful book that taught me just how to treat people and be positive with them. And I also worked in the service industry as a server at Olive Garden for 5 years. So that gave me a lot of confidence and the motive to want to take care of people. How to Win Friends and Influence People is great. I also really like spin selling. I like challenger selling, but the best thing that's going to really teach you is to just get out there and try things and to do it. So those would be the books that I would recommend. Get books that are on selling and on strategy, but also you can read so much in the analysis paralysis perspective and never get to the selling. So make sure you get around to do that. Great question. Lynn Mack, thank you for the comment. Appreciate that. Destiny, appreciate that you learned something new. And my appreciation for the time speaking. This has been a lot of fun. And, really what I hope you could take away from this is I had a lot of opportunity to fail in the last company where I was at, where I was a young person. There was almost no one my age in the industry. And I got to selling millions of dollars to federal agencies and basically everything under getting secret or like black level clearance and classifications. And so what it comes back to is sell like a human. Connect to people like a human as much as possible. And if you can really put yourself in their shoes and you can do that well and sell with empathy, none of the books that you're going to read are going to be as powerful as the skill set of being a good listener, showing up to meetings prepared, like the basic blocking and tackling, the same thing that I eventually learned in college and being a good student and showing up early and staying a little late. Those things get you further than any book can teach you. So definitely take what you can from those books, but do things like work hard, go the extra mile, create networking groups in your groups of friends of other business owners, create mastermind groups, and genuinely create accountability for each other to where you have other people with similar motivations like yourself who you can steal and borrow and refer to hopefully build each other's business. My girlfriend is a private chef and, graduated from the Culinary Institute of America, and she partners with these different wellness providers throughout Southern California for customers because they share the same customer set, and she can send referrals back to them too. So create the community as much as possible and have fun with selling. One of the best things that I ever did in terms of selling experience, well, I'll back it up. When I was a trainer at Olive Garden, people got really scared about dropping dishes. And so the first thing that we would do as a trainer is we would give them a tray full of stuff that was like spaghetti sauce and like drinks and just everything and just knock it out of their hand. And people would freak out and get sauce on the walls. We would do it before the cleaning crews came in, and then we would calmly clean everything up with them. And we would ask them, hey, was it that bad? And so you want to have that experience yourself as well and give yourself an opportunity to be a little goofy and mess things up and go through it. And if you don't do that, you're not giving yourself the opportunity to have fun with it. So I'm sure that's a little preachy in terms of the advice that you usually get on here, but it's some of the best advice I ever received is being able to not be a robot and be a person is going to allow you to attract people that are like yourself. When you start selling to people that you actually like, the selling becomes a lot easier than trying to force it through on a transactional sale to someone that you might not like at all.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely love those words of wisdom. I never knew about that, about Olive Garden. I'll have to look just for the red stains now, if I ever go there. I love the idea. It's about being human, and we're all human. And again, I know that I see it with a lot of the people that I work with, a lot of the startup founders. I've seen great ideas, but that fear of failing, that fear of making a phone call is inhibiting us from really helping the world become a better place. Some of these ideas are great ideas. And, we really need to get out there and showcase that and help people. So, let's not let fear hold us back.
Yeah, definitely. There's a weird sales term where they say, eat the frog. And I think people always know the thing that they're scared of the most. And the idea with eat the frog is, just do it and get over it. But I always found that if I found something that I had a major block against or I was stuck on, I would write it down. And there's something about putting it on pen and paper and seeing it where, just like the sales, you got to kind of accept it and come to terms with it until you can take action on it. So yeah, I'm right there with you. And I hope everyone got something powerful out of this and something to take with them that, is beneficial. And, if you get any follow-up questions, you have people that follow up and like this webinar and want to ask more questions, please feel free to reach out to me and see. I'm more than happy to provide answers or provide other leadership where I can, or some connection for students if that's, possible and helpful. Whatever I can do, let me know.
Thank you, Rick. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your words of wisdom. I thought this was an excellent presentation. So again, thank you. For all those people who have joined us and still have questions for Rick, or maybe still want some guidance, I did put my my calendar link in the chat window, so you can contact me. We can continue a dialogue. Rick, I believe now I'm recording this presentation. Would it be okay if I were to distribute this PowerPoint presentation to those people who are on the call?
Yeah, of course. And I'll go ahead and send that after this call as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. All right. Wonderful having you. With that, if there aren't any more questions, I think we'll go ahead and adjourn. Again, thank you all for showing up. And I'll follow up with you with the PowerPoint presentation. If there's anybody who didn't register through Eventbrite, please put in the chat window your email. You can direct message me, and I will make sure to get you this PowerPoint presentation.
Awesome. Thank you. That was a lot of fun, everyone.
All right. Thank you, Rick. Much appreciated.
Have a good one. Have a great week, everyone. Take care.
All right. You
Bye.
too. Bye-bye.